So just to let you know on that, I stopped by the PD Phase 2 this morning. The new interior block wall is in the process of being constructed. From the last meeting last week, we're still on schedule, so which is good since we've only been at a schedule for about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, so we're not behind yet. And then just to let you know, there was a lot of discussion a few months ago about our wards and our precincts and the submittal of that stuff. It was submitted. We got confirmation back from the Secretary of State that everything went fine, so they approved it. So the next step in that process is we need to publish notice of those approved boundaries once a week for 3 continuous weeks in the paper. So we'll start doing that, and that'll fulfill, and it'll be all legal and done. And that's all I had, unless you guys got questions.
Jacob?
I'll say most of what I have for the budget workshop. I did want to mention on loss. I had mentioned a few months back that they had overpaid us, and then they had said they weren't going to lower our payment. They did change their mind on that and lowered our January payment. So the January last payment was $30,000 less than normal because they didn't have that approved before.
Okay, we'll move on to the annual reports, and then I'll ask the council if they have anything specific. But we've got code enforcement, fire rescue, YMCA, and the CDB annual reports.
First off, good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, other city staff. Greg Smith, City Code Enforcement, Building Inspector official. What you have in front of you is just generally the building report. That's where the vast majority of my time is. I guess I just want to enlighten the new council staff and the mayor a little bit about what my office does. I do all the building inspections, issuing the building report or permits, reviewing all of the plans for build, making sure that they're within the compliance of the building code. Any major commercial projects, myself and Chief Dave Shipper go through the plans, making sure that they fit the fire code and ADA guidelines along with the building codes. Other parts of my job include dealing with the city code of ordinances. Most of which goes through my office. Some of it goes through the police department if they are citable offenses. I also head up and chair, or not so much chair, but head up the Planning and Zoning Commission, preparing the agenda, the minutes from previous meetings, and that kind of stuff. Board of Zoning Adjustments, I also chair that one as far as preparing the agenda, getting all the documents in order, prepping things prior to a meeting, and then briefing those various boards of what our meeting is going to be on that specific date. Generally, I like to have the property owners present at those meetings so they can be asked questions directly. Most of the time they are, but there have been occasions where they are not present, therefore the questions are directed to me. Nuisance abatements go through my office, along with general complaints are filed or shifted to my office. Most complaints I try to handle the same day they come in, unless it's late in the day where I just don't have the opportunity to get to it. But generally I can have a complaint handled within a matter of hours, but at no less than 24 hours. Most of the complaints that do come through my office are over the telephone and not written complaints. Any written complaint that does come in through my office, I do keep and file, and it's filed away at the end of the year. But otherwise, most of them are just phone complaints. I take notes, either make a return phone call and address the complaint or the issue and follow up in that matter. On a good note, last year before I hit this building permit report, good thing last year, abatements, we had 0 snow abatements last year where we had to, that I had to hire anybody to go and move snow. Now there were a lot of letters that were sent out, all of which were handled. Same thing with mowing. I mail out a lot of letters in the spring of the year based on complaints or my own observations. They're all handled. We only had 2 mowing abatements for the entire season, but it did take up the entire mowing season. And just recently, and there were fines assessed to it, and just recently in the last 2 weeks, I think both of those abatement fees and stuff have been paid because the property's been purchased and those fees were collected through special assessment at the courthouse. So abatements are way down, even though the letters still go out, but the letters and or phone calls are very effective. So that's a good thing. So anyway, otherwise, you know, vast majority of my time is in the building department and fielding complaints. So I'm going to make my report very brief. I know you guys have a lot on your agenda here this afternoon, so I'm going to get through mine pretty quickly. On the very first page, you'll see 2 charts. It's from last year and this year. It's just a 2-year comparison. 2021 is the top chart, and we finished the year 1 single-family home or single-family dwelling more than we did the previous year. However, the fees that were generated, revenue generated was about $6,000 more, and construction costs are way up as compared to previous years. This past year we had $7.5 million in homes as compared to just under $5.5 million the previous year. So there's a $2 million difference, but a lot of it is based on cost, construction costs. Materials just skyrocketed in the last year. Remodels are down slightly from 24 this year to 39 last year. Commercial is about the same. We had 9 commercial this year, 7 the previous year. But again, construction costs, $6.5 million this year as compared to just under $5 million the previous year. So costs are way up. You'll see our overall at the very bottom, overall permits issued this last year were 142 as compared to 161 the previous year. But this year we brought in $92,000 in revenue as compared to $76.5 or $76.6 the previous year. And again, construction costs are just reflected in the construction costs, over $20.5 million this year as compared to $13.5 million the previous year.
Yeah, so that's up because our fees are based off of construction costs.
That is correct. Fees, we have not changed fees. I don't know what chart Jason was using, but I'm guessing it was the same one that I'm using. We haven't increased our fees probably in 15 years. We're using the same chart we've used for years. So our fees schedule has not changed, but construction costs have went up substantially, which generates more revenue as far as fees are concerned. The next page, residential fees and values, just a bar graph comparing the previous 10 years. We've been fairly consistent, especially the last 3 to 4 years. 3 to 4 years, I mean, we've just been pretty steady. Last 3 years, everything's been up, but that just goes with the rise in construction costs. The next page shows a commercial 10-year history, pretty much the same, with the exception of 2016. Commercial was way up, And if you remember, the reason that was way up was because of the big NORAM expansion. That was the first year I started in this position, and that NORAM structure was just a huge number. But other than that, everything's been pretty consistent. The next page shows both a single-family dwelling and commercial. The blue highlighted areas are your single-family dwellings, and the brownish color is your commercial. It's a 10-year history, and the line graph at the bottom really kind of gives you an idea of where things are at. And again, you can see, for the last 3 to 4 years, things have been quite steady. We've been generating 20-something in residential homes and staying in that 6 to 9 or 6 to 10 in commercial. So pretty steady, but again, fees and construction costs are just way up. And then this one, the last page is the urban revitalization tax exemption. It shows since the inception of the urban revitalization, which was in 2012, we had 8. And then in last year we had 33. You can see I've got this graph extended out for till 2030. So it's just a matter of plugging in a number each year to keep this graph going. We've issued a total of 264, approved 264 various commercial, multifamily or single-family home tax exemption requests since 2012. Just a couple other real quick highlights that I noted that you'll see around town going up. You'll see the old Baumgars building being demoed. I would imagine that'll be done within a month or thereabouts. They're separating stuff as they go, so it just takes more time. Plans at this point, when I talk to the owner of the property, is to put up a new body shop on that piece of ground, which I think is going to make a nice area. Whether that happens this year or next year, I don't know. And he wasn't sure either, but it's going to take place. Love's Travel Stop and Hy-Vee will be taking out their permits this spring. Love's prints have been approved. It's just a matter of waiting until they're ready to start doing something out there. Ground is frozen, they can't really do anything. Hy-Vee, the preliminary prints have been looked at and approved, but I haven't received the final prints as of yet. I did speak with Hy-Vee representatives last week, and they will be getting me a full set of prints. Myself and Chief Shipper will review those in detail to make sure that they're all in compliant. Jimmy John's is done structurally, but they're waiting for some equipment to be received. They're part of the backlog of equipment sitting out on the west coast somewhere out in the ocean, but they're waiting. They're looking at probably March before they can really have everything ready to go. Pride Group facility on 14th Avenue, just south of the sheriff's office, is well underway. Concrete footings are all down. You'll see wooden structure of the first building going up at this time. I was just in it late, today's Tuesday, it was late last Friday. I was in it. Framing is in, they've got concrete work to do, all the electrical, but you'll see the frame is up and it's looking good. Dogwood second edition is full. The last lot, I believe, sold on that just this last week. I don't think they've closed on it yet, but Dogwood second edition is full. Dogwood third edition, we talked about earlier today. Steve addressed that. I'm sure just for general speaking purposes, the east portion of that, I have no doubt will probably be opening up some point this spring for people to purchase lots and build, with the west half still having infrastructure and that kind of stuff to be completed. And the K&S 4th edition, which is south of 18th Street. I talked with the developers a few weeks ago. They're very satisfied with the lots that have sold already and the number of lots that have sold to date. And they're looking forward to continue selling of lots and getting homes out there. So a big thank you to both of those developers for Dogwood 3rd Edition and K&S 4th. If it wasn't for those individuals to step up and put in their own money and hard work to have these housing developments brought into our town, we would be out of lots. So huge kudos and thank you to those guys. Be more than happy to field any questions if you guys have any.
Greg, are these years, are these calendar years, or are they?
They are calendar years, not
Okay.
not fiscal years.
Okay.
It's January through December, so it's calendar years.
Just as the permit is paid for, right?
Correct.
So construction could be ongoing.
Correct. Yep, it's calendar years, January through December of each year.
Okay.
Any other questions?
The other question I got, Greg, is on abatements, whether it be snow or lawns. One letter, that's all you get, right?
What I do, and it's very self-explanatory on there, all of my abatement letters. Now, what I have learned, it costs a fair amount of money to do one abatement letter. So what I have started doing, which has become effective, is take a very similar writing and just mail it out regular mail, but that's not an official abatement notice. And that will handle a vast majority of it, and it's a lot cheaper.
Right.
One certified letter, which has to be used as an abatement, is over $4. And that's expensive. When you mail out 40 or so of them, you're talking a lot of money. So I send out generally a courtesy notice, which is very similar to a full abatement letter. Then I do follow up with it and look within a few days or a week. And if they have not taken care of the issue, I do send out an abatement notice by certified mail, giving them a specific date. And at the bottom of all of my abatement notices, it says, this will be the only notice you receive for this mowing season or this winter snow moving season, whatever it pertains to.
So if another snow comes along, you don't get another warning?
That is correct.
All snows from then on?
That is correct.
Good enough. That's all, that's good.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Greg, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you have a letter that goes out for people who blow their driveway snow back out onto the street?
If I receive the complaint on it, I do have letters such as that I have prepared and mailed out to people, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You want to tattle on anybody right now, Mike?
Rex Knapp, he keeps blowing it out.
A lot of times,
But I'll have my camera ready.
a lot of times, Mike, I have mailed letters. It's generally not an abatement notice because after I send them a courtesy notice, they don't do it again. But I have also made phone calls, and or if I know it's taking place at the moment that that person calls, I will drive up there and speak with that person individually. So I've done it. I've done it a lot of different ways. Any other questions? Thank you, council.
Fire and rescue.
Afternoon, Mayor, Council, Administration. Hopefully everybody has a copy. I'm just going to skim through the report real quick. Pretty picture on the front page. The next page is just a general information page, types of services that we offer. We're an all hazards department, which means basically we can get called for about anything. As of this report being generated, we had 43 members. 33 were cross-trained fire EMS, 10 of them were strictly EMS, and then you have 9 full-time, of course, that are cross-trained of that 43. I did put some response times in there. One of the things when we merged in July was we were looking at improving response times and times to calls and patients and things like that. So you can see those response times are doing fabulous. On average, 48 seconds to get an EMS rig out of the building, 3 minutes, 32 seconds on average to get to a patient. And in years past, that used to be anywhere from 7 to 9 minutes just to get the rig out of the building. Fire, we've improved almost 2 minutes on response time, 2.5 minutes to get out of the building. And then our average number of calls per day is 4.88 or 5 calls a day roughly. The equipment we have is listed there, how many rescue units, how many pumpers and things like that. The next page is the staff that was your firefighter EMS staff as of 2021, December. And then their classifications kind of listed behind them there if you want to look through and see who's an EMT or an EMR. Of course, if you might be a battalion chief, but you're also a paramedic, we didn't list some of that. The next page is total number of calls for the year, 1,784, and the breakdown is there. City fire calls, rescue or ambulance calls, rural fire calls, rural rescue ambulance calls, and then 408 transfers were done to different facilities by our rescue units. Our fire breakdown is there on what types of fire calls we're handling, and the dollar amount of loss is an estimation, but we're over 1.3 million. It only takes one really bad fire to rack that number way up, so that number fluctuates year to year. The next couple of pages are the graphs that I normally did for the fire. So if you look at the 488 calls, since we merged, we don't issue a number for each entity, so to speak, anymore. So like a car accident, the fire would pull a number because fire responded. Ambulance would pull a number because they responded. So now a car accident is strictly an EMS call, an injury accident. So that doesn't reflect in here. So that 48, you could probably add another 50 calls to it if we were still keeping track individual departments. So we were right up there around the 530 total. But we listed 488, and then the breakdown on the next page shows of the 488, 385 were city calls, 103 were rural. And of those, that's your 488, 19 were mutual aids to other communities. And that 137, Clark, you asked me this from time to time, that is ones being handled by full-time people that we're not paging everybody for. And that number is going to